Hello, Flat Earth researchers, debaters and debunkers. A couple of reasons for doing this stream. Mainly to make sure I'm doing it right with the OBS. Hi, oh, the chat's filling up already. Hi, Black Sheep, Knight of the Round Table, hi. Flat Earth Kid, hello. Ryan Q. Vincent, good day. Boom me, hi. Are you hearing the sound? Is it okay? Non-schooling, hi. Volume's low, okay. Second, how's that? Is that any better? And I want to make sure I'm not getting the echo this time as well. Hi, blood is thicker than water. Dale, alright. Sound is low. Slight reverb. Okay, just a second. Black Sheep in the City, better. Hi, Tony Dixon. Hi, Nick. Hi, Cool Pics. Oh, funny echo and reverb again. It has an echo. Damn. Why is that? I thought I had it sussed out. Slight distortion. Let's see. FPV Angel. A little reverb. Okay. I'm honestly not sure why that is. I thought I'd done what I need to do. Let's try that. Okay, sorry, bear with me. Okay. All right, okay. Appreciate your flexibility, all those who are saying it's not too bad. I'll get better at this. So hopefully on the screen you've got this Dunning-Kruger Effect document that I've just put together. And just wanted to go and talk about that because obviously flat earthers are often accused of being ignorant of science and suffering from the Dunning-Kruger effect. So I wanted to go through the study, what it actually means, and basically how I suppose anyone really can benefit from knowing about this and applying it to our own thought processes, our own beliefs, our own assumptions about our skills. All right, it'd be great just to know if the sound is a little bit better. I've just got the one window streaming. I've got hi, boom me. Great. Well, yeah, it's 3 o'clock in the morning for me on Tuesday. So it's nice to have everyone tuning in during the week. Live Kung Fu, hi. All right. Yeah. All right. I'll kind of just go through this document I prepared. Do I have problems sleeping? No, I'm just I sleep when I need to sleep. I've got a very flexible schedule, and I'm often up very early. Heliocentric, what's the future like? Very bright. Night of the Round Table, ignorant of science, says pseudo-scientific religious ballers. Ha! Dale suggests you may have 2 mics active. Yeah, I've turned off the video camera mic. I'm using just one audio mic. So I've turned off desktop audio. I've turned off the video capture audio. So I am not, let me just, I'm going to try that. It might go quiet. Let me see if that makes a difference. How is that? I've just turned off another audio device. Does that make any difference? Would be good to know. Yeah, the watch page is muted. Sounds fine. Lovely. Okay, good stuff. Okay, perfect. Oh, super duper. Thank you. Okay, now I know. Appreciate that. That okay, that did it. Lovely. Okay, so if anyone uses OBS and they use a separate mic, I muted the audio input capture. No echo, but a little bit lower. Okay, let me just turn it up slightly. See if that helps. All right. I reckon that's probably about as good as we're going to get it. How's that? Yeah, better? Okay. That looks pretty loud on my levels now. Worse? Oh no. All right. Well, I don't want to be messing around with this too much. Okay, it's back up. Great. Lovely. Okay. Super. Okay. Lovely. Too loud. Okay. All right. We're getting there. All right. Okay. Super. All good. Okay. Thank you, Cool Pics. Lovely. Loud and clear. Excellent. All right. Okay, so let's rock and roll with this one. I'm sure if anyone who's been involved in arguments, etc., online have had these accusations thrown at us that the flat earther is suffering from the Dunning-Kruger Effect, and just so we all know what it is, it's named after two social psychologists, David Dunning and Justin Kruger. And so what is it really? It is a type of cognitive bias in which people believe they are smarter and more capable than they really are. Now, of course, this is something that the flat earther can be accused of because they appear to be spouting some esoteric knowledge that obviously most people don't believe. And so we are often accused of thinking that we are special because we've found out some new information. And we have and so the Dunning-Kruger effect is also this low ability of people to low ability people do not possess the skills needed to recognize their own incompetence. So of course, hi Fat Earth Bear, hi Zoo Scott. Of course, we're often told that we're ignorant of science and therefore, we're stupid and we do not even have the cognitive ability to recognize our own ignorance of science. But of course, what we also know about the Globe Earth Defender is that they ignore all the evidence and the contradictions that come with the Globe Earth belief. Of course, if you start looking at the moon landings and question whether they actually took place or whether they were faked, and you look at all the evidence that people have put together, and of course you can personally I was 50-50 for a long time. I was also into the whole aliens thing and all that, researched all that, but eventually came to realize that it was pretty obvious that we the royal we hadn't gone to the moon. So and I suppose, is one step towards realizing that we're not on a globe, because they didn't have the science or the physics to be able to pull off the moon landings. So let's just see what Robert Billings. If we did not see our own, oops, I'm sorry. Let me just go up there. Robert Billings. Oh, G2G, the son of man. We are special. We are special. Yeah. Robert Billings. If we did not see our own ignorance first, then we would have never had the awakening to the truth that the flat Earth brought us. Yes, exactly. Yeah. I think this is the whole thing, isn't it? We study, we reflect, we look at what led us to believe we're on a globe. And of course, we quickly realize that we've never ever seen it with our own eyes. No one's ever been up far enough or high enough away to see the entire Earth. So, of course, we then understand that it is something that we have to believe, we have to have faith in. And then we see the GoPro footage, study that, and, the Red Bull jump was one of the first things I remember looking at, and comparing the horizons, and then you compare that with the ISS footage, and you see bendy solar panels on the ISS, all these things. So yes, these are things we would have glossed over and just taken at face value until we actually studied them. So absolutely, the bouncing about of the astronauts, the green screens. So for sure, it does involve investigating. And this is, of course, why we say do your own research, because it involves looking into all these other things, all these other factors that contribute to what we assume to be knowledge that we live on a globe. Yeah? And the evidence that is said to support it. Emerald Rider, hi, good to see you, man. Extige, I'm not. Oh, how do you say that? And Fractal Escape. All right, nice one. We've got Flat Earth Kid, Phil Jones, Steve HV. Hi. Steve HV says they accuse us when it's them that suffer from Dunning-Kruger, Stockholm Syndrome, and cognitive dissonance. Yes, I was going to kind of put the two together, the Stockholm Syndrome, and but yeah, of course, because we are held hostage here, and we end up falling in love with our beloved leaders. It's funny to see, really. It's funny how we are conditioned to point the finger at North Korea or Iran, Iraq, or those the Taliban, Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein. Gaddafi, I don't know if you've ever looked at it. Gaddafi had a green book, I think it was called, that was a. Oops, let me just do the window here. Rainy season. And if when you look into what beyond what the mainstream media tells us about Gaddafi, then we see that he did so much for his country, and he put his people first, and used the money that was made from the oil revenue, put that towards people under Gaddafi got free education as high as they wanted to, free housing. If you got married, you got money given to you, free public transport, free water, everything. All these things were provided by Gaddafi for his people. Iraq as well, before we went in there and decimated the place. Of course. We often remain ignorant of the real situation if we just listen to CNN or BBC or Tony Blair telling us that they have weapons of mass destruction ready to strike within 20 minutes. Again, these things were taken at face value without much investigation. I remember before the invasions of Iraq. Millions of people are on the street protesting, but they were going to do it anyway. Right. Oh wow! Just scrolling through the chat here. Robert Billings says, I cringe when I believed it for over 40 years of my life, without question, now as childly obvious as the truth truly is. Yeah. Eric, hi. Globers love to pull the Dunning-Kruger card, but it's a catch-22. Who can decide who has Dunning-Kruger? The experts. Yeah, actually, yes. I mean, obviously, this is just something I was going to go through. I mean, we can all suffer from it. I think it's essential to recognize that this is the Dunning-Kruger effect is something that anyone can have. So yeah, sure, but it's being aware of that, isn't it, that makes the difference. So rather than just pointing the finger, again, it just comes back to that self-reflection, doesn't it? Flat Earth Bear, Gaddafi was about to nationalize oil and go gold standard. Yes. Was it the African Dina that he was going to bring in just prior to his execution, and the World Bank taking over and installing the puppet regime? Exactly, Flat Earth Bear. That's what it's all about, and it's funny, isn't it? I mean, that's what these wars are about. They're doing the bidding for the World Bank, and yeah, just global mafia. So yeah, these people do have endless resources at their disposal. So to ignore that and the true reasons for these invasions is Dunning-Kruger for sure. Fractured Escape. Dunning-Kruger has two learning curve. When you come out of the indoctrination centers, you're stuck on MT. Stupid. MT, stupid, MT. I'm not sure what you mean by MT. Zeus Scott, so long as 100 remain alive. Robert Billings, if Gaddafi was a bad man, which I think he was when he was obviously working with the CIA bunch, he made amends after we killed his son in the late 80s. Yeah, again, really difficult to know the full story, isn't it? That's the problem. I mean, of course, these people always become compromised. If you're a leader, you're the leader of a country, you want to do things for your country. It's just how can we ever really know what was really going on behind the scenes? All kinds of wheeler dealing and compromises. But of course, when you're dealing with the largest military industrial complex on the earth, then your choices can become very limited. Steve HV, people have to recognize how their minds work so they can see things like Dunning-Kruger in themselves and in others. Excellently said, man. Absolutely. Yeah, this is it. And this is really, I think, this is what the whole FE thing is, isn't it, really? It's a study of the human mind and how we came to believe a particular model or way of thinking. Things being billions of miles away, light speed, the heroes of science we were given, Newton, Einstein, Galileo, and the history, all that stuff. It's just we have to. And again, examining our own senses, what they tell us, compared to what we are told, all these things. You're absolutely right. And this is why it's such a mind-blowing experience, because, boom, all of a sudden, you're thinking of everything that has contributed to your belief, your behavior, all that, the whole thing. So yes, it is a study of the mind, absolutely. And this is what's so compelling about the whole thing. Yeah. So, all right, the chat's going wild, which is great. Chat amongst yourselves. Obviously, if you've got something that you want to say to me directly, then just put in the @ sign, and then PHU, and then you should get the choice to mention me. But obviously, it's great to just for everyone. I love going through the chat afterwards as well to see how people have interacted. It's great because, and I must say that the last live stream I did, it was really nice to see there were some globe defenders in there. They had some questions, and it was really good to see people in the chat taking the time to explain and try without being nasty, because I don't that's how we quickly descend into these arguments and the nastiness. But if as long as they're not obviously trolling, which again is understandable. I mean, I personally know someone very close to me who is a full-on glober. He calls me all the names under the sun, and just he has massive Dunning-Kruger, and he's a massive proponent of the globe. But he's not, he acts like a troll when we're on, trying to chat online or Skype or whatever. And there's nothing in it for him. He's not being paid. He's not a government agent, because I know him very well. But it's just his belief, and it doesn't matter what I show him. The abuse comes, the denial comes, and it's just. So I do know that from personal experience that even the most ardent trolls are not necessarily on task, they're on task defending their own belief, but of course they are fixed in this belief that because the majority believes, or the majority that they know of believes this. Of course, over here in Thailand, that the globe isn't really a thing, it's not an issue. Yeah, so there just isn't the whole. Oh, we've got the big. If that gets too loud, I'll close the window. Yes, FPV Angel. Some will wait until CNN announces it's flat. To be honest, I don't think they will. That's the thing, isn't it? They will always have the supporters. It's just like politics, isn't it? Hi, Bangkok Dave. Nice one. What are you doing up so late, mate? To wait for an announcement in the mainstream media, I think, is just asinine, to be honest, because they're not. They will keep up the division. They will keep up, just like they do with politics. As we see with the two-party politics. Are the millions of people who vote for a particular politician right or wrong? No, they're just being blinded by the whole distraction that's being played out. Cool pics. I've just got to, let your thing show. Yeah. John Corey of the Iron Realm. I only play with trolls and I get really bored. LBB Store. Hi, how you doing, man? Tom Buddhas. All right. The Buzz Dev. Hi, how you doing? Gideon. Hello again. Eric. It's 3:14 in Thailand. Yes, I only stay up that late to play Fortnite. Mr. F.E. Dalmatia. Shout out to Karen B, aka Howard Stern. A. McKinsey. Hiya. Kevin. All right, nice one. Okay, I'm really sorry if I'm missing some of the people that have joined. It's the chat's on slow mode. You've got a 10-second interval between each chat, by the way. Steve Finneran. Hi. Bates 60. All I know is Walmart are selling gift cards at a record pace. They have to pay the trolls. Okay. Tom Buddhas. Hi. Josh Corey. Okay, we got you. Proficient Pirate. Ahoy. All right. Yeah. Now, interesting to just very briefly, interesting to see a few developments recently. As we just mentioned earlier on, that this whole thing, the whole flat Earth thing, is part of the journey of people when they have this go into the whole kind of exploration of self-awareness, and often we've been through there were certain things that triggered insight. or exploration or education, self-education, and I think sometimes we can see the difference between those of us who have been on a journey of self-improvement, as it were, and arrived at flat Earth after going through many other conspiracies and looking into these things and maybe asking the questions, what's next? But then we have others who jumped on the bandwagon, and Night of the Round Table. So click the three dots at the top of chat and you can click and view participants, and it will show you a list of the chatters. Oh, look at that. Nice one. Thank you. Okay, right then. Those who I haven't mentioned and would like to say hi to and thank you. Alexander Lightwater, Bangkok Dave, Daz, Studio 68, Emerald Rider, Eric McNerney, Flat Earth Bear, FPV Angel, Gideon, Josh Corey, Kevin, Night of the Round Table, LBB Store, Lee Templar, alright, Lev Kung Fu, Mr. FE, Dalmatia, Multi Tom Tom, hello again, Phuket Word, that's me, I'm in the chat as well apparently, Proficient Pirate, yeah, Richard Burke, Robert Billings, Steve Finneran, Steve HV, The Buzz Dev, Tom Budas, Tony Dixon, and Zeus Scott. Lovely, looks to be in alphabetical order as well. Smashing. Okay, I've got to go back to the chat now. Thank you very much for that, Night of the Round Table. I've learned something new tonight. Excellent. Okay. All right. Okay, let's... All right, Eric, you pronounced it correctly. Very few can. Okay. Now, I just worked in media a long time, so getting names right was a very important thing in media. You get it wrong, you're screwed. Right then. So, what is Dunning-Kruger? Type of cognitive bias. People believe they're smarter and more capable than they really are. Low ability people do not possess the skills needed to recognize their own incompetence. Poor self-awareness and low cognitive ability leads us to overestimate our own capabilities. So, I think an example of that, especially... Obviously, if we are someone who has specialised in something and we've gained a lot of knowledge. Oh, Steve HV, I just got to try and show your comment there. Robert Billings asks, says, I have been a subscriber since your very first year, and I will say that I appreciate how you have maintained your non-biased way of describing the issue. Oh, thank you very much, Robert. Yeah, it's always been my aim just to try to bridge that understanding, this kind of big or misunderstanding, because that's what I could see. I could see all this hate, and it's like, well, hang on a minute. You know, there's people that have done so much research, whether it was the moon landings, all those people that have done research, and then you've got these other people ignoring it and poo-pooing it and hating, and it's like, no, hang on a minute, there's something to this. So yeah, that's always been my aim, and I hope it continues to do that. So thank you very much, Robert. That's nice to know. Hi TP. All right. Now, this is an interesting quote by Charles Darwin. Ignorance more frequently begets confidence than does knowledge. He said that in The Descent of Man. So again, yeah, that ignorance of the evidence that is presented. For example, the space fakery, and all the other things, or the lack of evidence thereof, of something like the force of gravity. Excuse me. Risky Poodles, hi. The objectors just don't realise why unless they are paid. Then maybe they know what they are defending. Yeah, I think very few, to be honest. Again, of course, we all hear that statement that, oh, all scientists must be in, and like, all people in the aerospace industry must be ill, and of course they're not. That it's just a very few people, and they might even, politicians, prime ministers and stuff, they don't necessarily know anything any different. They haven't had the time to investigate. They just support the military industrial complex. It's business as usual for those guys. So they don't, it's not that governments and people in high positions necessarily know any different to anyone else. They just believe the same old stuff. They might, of course, be aware that space travel isn't possible, but of course, for them, that's just a small detail, because it's all about the business. Excuse me. Business. Robert Billings says, it ain't that people are so ignorant, it's just that so much of what they know just isn't so. Josh Billings, Samuel Clemens, contemporary. Okay. Yeah. Stashman, opposite of Dunning-Kruger is called imposter syndrome. Okay. All right. Yeah. So check your gooch. Hi Nick. What is your question on or opinion on transgenders beginning in all the top positions of government, media, etc., seeing as you live in a country with a lot of them? Well, all I can say is it really isn't an issue to me personally, and I don't think people should be making such an issue of it. I mean, obviously, if someone is excuse me, I'm passing themselves off as a male or a female when they are in fact not, then that is a form of deception. So yes, we should be aware of that. And but really, whether someone is a man or a woman or a transgender or a cross-dresser or whatever their sexual preference is, as long as it or orientation is, unless they are, they kind of have kind of psychopathic tendencies to want to harm people, then it really doesn't have anything to do with anything else, as far as I'm concerned. And from my experience, I've seen that. Here there are a lot of men, or lady boys or couturiers, and there are a lot of lesbians that and they are tomboys, and often they are very very good business people, that because they seem to understand both. They have this extra ability to excel often, so they seem to have this kind of because they have maybe both the male and female elements of their mindset. And that is actually something to look at in this Dunning-Kruger thing as well. Oops, I saw that someone mentioned me just a minute ago. Thank you. It's the deception that is a problem. Yeah, okay, yeah, right, yeah. So again, yeah, it's not someone's gender or sexual orientation is not an issue. And whether they're a man in woman's clothing or a man with tits or whatever, it shouldn't be really an issue unless it is an outright deception in that way. Oops, I got to just Bates. I'll let your comment go through. Flat enough. Hi, damning good. All right, Level World. Hi. Okay. Jim Cap says, is there a scientific name for people who are more intelligent than they think they are? I've known quite a few people like that. They lived their whole life defending deferring to high authority. Humble people, I suppose. Uh, yeah, just you know. But I wouldn't know if there's a scientific or a psychological term for that. Maybe someone can help out there. Right then. So, who's affected by the Dunning-Kruger effect? Everyone, basically. We all are. I think we all know that. So yes, of course, this accusation can be made by globe defenders and by well, just anyone. But of course, the thing is to be aware of that. And of course, what we see when it comes to these people, well, especially the anti-flat earthers, is we see no science being done, no self-exploration being done. We see no experiments, all we see is a repetition of the official narrative, and we see attacking of the flat earther. No need to mention names. We've all seen them, and we also see this absolute point-blank refusal to even compromise or so even things that are obviously open to interpretation would maybe not offer any proof either way, whether it's the Eratosthenes experiment or even the fact, when people, you drop something and this is somehow perceived as a proof that we live on a globe and a proof of gravity. These are the kinds of things that if we were into an adult, open-ended, open-minded discussion, we could at least reach some agreement that there are many, many things or factors that are open to interpretation. And of course, gravity is a horrible one to argue about, because you can't get these globe defenders they will say that weight is created by gravity, and you say, well, what's creating gravity? And then you say, you ask, the mass of the Earth is supposed to be great, blah, 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 just you cannot nail them down. And so they haven't thought it through. They haven't got down to the basics of that. So yeah, it annoys me intensely when we damning good. They don't concede on anything. I mean, nothing. You're absolutely right, because I think essentially, for example, the horizon thing. They have to defend this to the hilt, because I think intrinsically they know. They know that any admission, any compromise, is a slippery slope. This is it. So I'm sure part of the cognitive dissonance there is this instinctive realization that they have to defend all of these things, and to a ridiculous extent. Hi, Shane Walter. Jamie Brown's in there as well. All right. So, who is affected? Everyone. No matter how informed or experienced we are, we all have areas in which we are uninformed and incompetent. And I think, again, when it comes to the truth seeker, then, of course, we have been through, and we continue to go through this journey of discovery and self-learning. And of course, the internet is great for doing that. We revisit science. We look at all those other things. We look at how radar works, or the distances we are supposed to be able to see. All these things. We look at optics. We look at frequencies and all the other things. So you do become a jack of all trades, because you look into all the other things, all the other branches of science. So Lee Templar, I've got to just I'll show your chat there. Spot on level says, I think I know everything. Yeah. Sparky Lee, hi. Okay, you're working outside. All right. Flat Earth Kid. Jack of all deceptions, more. Oh yeah, that's a very good way of putting it. Yeah, yeah. And of course, realizing that we deceive ourselves on a regular basis, isn't it? We will lie to ourselves to get something we want. We'll lie to our loved ones to for whatever reason it might be. If we and often we know we're doing it, and we kind of know that they know. So it's again comes down to that awareness, doesn't it? Yeah. So who else is affected, or who is affected by the Dunning-Kruger? People who are genuine experts in one area may mistakenly believe that their intelligence and knowledge carry over into other areas in which they are less familiar. And an example I've raised here, of course, is, for example, a brilliant scientist or mathematician. They might not possess good working knowledge of grammar and composition, so they will not recognize. Oh, I didn't finish that. But basically, I think, of course, language, or the use of language, or misuse and abuse of language, or how it is adapted into the globe Earth talk, or things, the way it's described. Again, we have all these explanations. Again, when it comes down to gravity or the word level, you can't even establish first principles when talking to a glober about level, because they will insist that level is curved, and you can't even, and they will stick to that. There is no compromise on even saying that, well, okay, you could at least say level is this, or it's this, or level is, they want to say, perpendicular to the center of gravity on a sphere. Oh, it's just, no, level is level from this point to this point. That's what level is. And that's but of course, even in surveying, depending on how they want to interpret their results, they will claim that, well, level becomes this, and then you've got your plumb line going down this way and this way. It just becomes ridiculous. This is the thing I would love to have is for people to admit. Hi, Celtic 67. This admission that at the very least many of these things are open to interpretation, but of course we see that we don't get that far a lot of the time with the hardcore globe defenders. The mathematician, the scientist, and of course, what's often a familiar trait with someone who's mathematically minded is, on a social level, they might not be so adept. So they might not see the subtleties in language, because for them, mathematics is a language which is very clear cut. But for someone else who understands the nuances of other languages, we understand that mathematics is a language, and it can be used to tell facts or fairy tales. So, but for the mathematician, as far as they're concerned, whatever they're focused on, the mathematics is a fact. So if they draw a circle and they get their tangent lines and their angles and everything, of course, that is an undeniable fact. Some of these comments are getting hidden automatically. So if you're arguing amongst yourselves, I can go through that later, but otherwise I'll just get too distracted trying to work out whether I should reveal comments or not. So I'll go through those later. And here I've highlighted this. The Dunning-Kruger effect is not synonymous with low IQ. Easy to judge others and behave or believe that such things simply do not apply to you, which of course we get with the accusations from the globe defenders, is this, you're stupid, you don't understand science, you don't understand physics, when in fact, no, we understand physics, but we also understand that mathematics has been used to manipulate the way physics is described, or even create imaginary physics. But of course, in the glober's mind or the mathematician's mind, the mathematical formula for gravity works. The whole idea of an external force. And if it's funny because I think back to how we were taught physics, and of course the first thing they do is they get you to use a spring balance or a spring weight, and you weigh things, and then you're pushing things along or you're pulling them along, and you get this fundamental understanding that to push or pull something, or even a weight, requires an external force. And so then of course you're stuck with that fundamental understanding that for anything to move in any direction requires an external force. And that of course is true if you're going to push something along, push something up. So naturally they say, well, if we're a globe in free space, then for it to move along, it must require some external force, or for something to fall towards the earth, it requires an external force. And of course, the one thing about this whole globe thing is, and gravity, is that connection. The connection from things falling to the heavens, the sky. And that's the thing, is if you can separate between those two things, understand that the earth and whatever happens on the earth has its own physics, and whatever's going on up in the sky obviously is governed by some other kind of physics that we really don't have a handle on. But of course, with Newtonian physics, then this connection has been made. It's really, to me, it's very, although it seems very complex, it's actually very simple and asinine to assume that something falling through the air has some kind of connection to the movement of the luminaries. It's just insane. But of course, this is why these people are given god-like status, because they appeared to have the answers to life, the universe, and everything, the mechanics of the universe, how it all works. And so this is, of course, why they are considered to be, gurus, or I'm trying to think of the word, but the same as religious leaders. These mathematicians that manage to have us perceive this connection between dropping something through the air and the luminaries, and of course the earth falling around the sun, and all that. So Stan Smith says, only thing joining the earth to the heavens is us. Interesting point. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that, there is a relationship with the stars, for example. I mean, there is a good reason to consider astrology as something that's a field of study that, or a science. Astronomy, astrology, they are one and the same, really. So Oxbow Spirit, hi. The phase level curve is an oxymoron. Absolutely, yeah. And the globe belief is full of oxymorons, isn't it? Again, the whole just gravity. I discussed it the other day. It's just the opposite of creating weight by creating that centrifugal force. Yet we are told that somehow this force to have us sticking to the outside of a sphere is physics, when it's not. Yeah. So Celtic 67 says, the real empowerment begins with the individual. The individual must do the heavy lifting, him or herself. It's not easy deciphering through the bullshit, but focusing on the substance rather than lights. Yeah, of course, yeah. And this is the thing, isn't it? The whole globe model is based on looking up at the stars. And again, if someone cannot agree at least to compromise or to see both things when looking at, for example, Polaris, and we're told it's because of the curve of the Earth that it goes, down towards the horizon the further away we get from it. If one cannot cognitively realize that we are making an observation with our eyes, and so we have to consider how the eyes work. This is just so simple, but to even get some of these people to that stage of considering that, well, even scientists admit that the act of making a measurement affects the outcome, especially with quantum physics now. They realize now that if you desire a certain, or you're looking for a certain result, then you're going to get it, because that's how quantum physics works. It's basically that the physics of intention. It's there. It is a real thing. Yeah. Actually, I was looking there. I was looking through an article the other day. There are 13 things that are just completely out of whack and don't make sense, that go for the model. Apparently, those Pioneer, what are they called? The spacecraft they apparently sent out of the solar system. One's lost, one is gone. Of course, there's huge debate as to whether the universe. I think they've noticed that the temperature of the universe is consistent, so it can't be expanding as they once thought. There are so many things that they are discovering, and of course, all these things challenge the heroes of science. They challenge Einstein's theories, but these things are left on the back burner. The astronomical unit, for example, is something that has become just it's never something that was ever measured, and it's simply based on how quickly light travels in a vacuum, and the assumed distance between the Earth and the Sun. And they spent 20 years debating this and finally arriving at a way of describing the astronomical unit, which again has no real basis in fact. It's just whatever fits the equations the best. Dunning-Kruger's research, basically what they did was Dunning and Kruger asked their 65 participants to rate how funny different jokes were. Some of the participants were exceptionally poor at determining what other people would find funny. Yet these same subjects described themselves as excellent judges of humour. And I'm sure as we look at that, we can think of all these people that are doing hit pieces and think they are being funny when they take someone's face and Photoshop it onto something else, or they imagine that their sense of humor, or calling someone, making up funny names for someone, is something that everyone finds funny, and really it's just again, this comes down to, I suppose, being able to use discretion and determine, the nuances of language and things like that. And we go back to the skilled mathematician, or look at a lot of the teachers, the physicists, etc., that are teaching the graduates. Of course, they never left school. They've never had any real life experience. They went through school, excelled at mathematics or whatever, or physics. Or what is physics? Obviously you have to, you're not necessarily going out and doing experiments. You're just memorizing ways of explaining how physics works. And you're memorizing those, and there are some very good tutors of physics, and they have some great imaginative ways of getting their audience to understand physics or demonstrate with practical demonstrations. But then, of course, they go off into space, and then it becomes just mathematical explanations. And again, for the physicist who sees that the mathematics makes sense, then of course they believe that it must be true. When again, someone who may be able to do the maths and understand physics, but also understands that the mind can see these things in different ways. It is a matter of interpretation. So, what's moving? To stick to the rigid belief that the Earth is moving is again, it's very single-minded, it's very stubborn, and a kind of display of the whole Dunning-Kruger thing. But I must admit that looking into this early on, it was very difficult to detach from the idea that everything we see in the sky is because the Earth is moving. But it does. You eventually can see that the sun. Celtic, I'll come back to your comment in a second. We can see that the sun and the moon and the stars, they're acting separately. But I must admit it was a very difficult thing to perceive at first. Just go back up to Celtic's comment there. Says, I asked one if they could practically demonstrate a gas pressure being created and maintained without physical containment, and he told me an aircraft wing had lift. Yeah, I'm as bamboozled as you by that one, man. Weird. Yeah. Dave Hinkle, hi. The globe only exists in the imagination of humans. Yeah. That was a weird one, wasn't it? Chris Hayes, hello there. Okay. So just to carry on with this over here a second. Yeah, so they're very so these participants who thought they were funny or didn't have that they were exceptionally poor at determining what other people would find would find funny, yet these same subjects described themselves as excellent judges of humor. I got here people who scored in the lowest percentiles on tests of grammar, humor, and logic also tended to dramatically overestimate how well they had performed. Their actual test scores placed them in the 12th percentile, but they estimated that their performance placed them in the 62nd percentile. Now, again, this was one of the tests was grammar. Grammar, humor, and logic. And some of these people overestimated. So yeah, again, the Dunning-Kruger thing is something that can happen in anyone or any skill set. It doesn't matter. But of course, the point here is to realize that our skill set isn't the be-all and end-all, and it takes many. But of course, we do have this appeal to authority when it comes to rocket scientists. And they, of course, know things that your average layperson doesn't know. But again, that doesn't mean that they are making rockets that end up going to space. Yeah, these are simple, logical things that we can determine that it can't work in a vacuum if space is a vacuum. But then, of course, why are they talking about 99% of the universe being made up of dark matter if it's a vacuum? And so, of course, a vacuum is required if you're going to take earthbound physics for example, Galileo's experiments with marbles and his whole thing about friction is part of that real physics that was then applied to the movement of the planets in space. There was this, obviously, he realized that there was a limit to the time and distance that a marble could roll or carry on if it had some friction, even if that friction was air. So, apply that to the idea of space. And so they have, a vacuum again is just part of the globe heliocentric model. It's a necessity of the model if you're going to take earthbound physics and apply that to the movement of celestial objects. And of course, they have to assume that everything's falling through empty space. However, scientific measurements tell us that, or tell the scientists that it's not empty space. There is matter. There is an ether, as it were, if that's what you want to call it. So what happens then? What do they do? What do they do? There's the cognitive dissonance. There are the facts telling them that there is some kind of substance. Even Hawking, in his book A Brief History of Time, kind of uses this analogy of, I think, kind of marbles in a syrup or something. Like, so this is it. I mean, even in their minds, the elements in the universe are distributed in some kind of medium. However, the model requires that there is no medium, a zero density medium. So how do they justify that in their mind? But at least, again, Hawking, whether he was genuine or not, but in his book, at least he still says that they might have got it all wrong. At least that's being pragmatic and scientific. But of course, the problem is the institutionalized things that we are given. There's so-called knowledge that people fear to address. So they just go along with it instead. And yeah, of course, you're going to, if you're a physics teacher or whatever, and you stream there. Okay, might have dropped for a minute there. I got a message that OBS disconnected. Just see if it comes back. So I'm just watching. Oh, bugger. Am I back? I can't tell. On the watch page, it's disappeared. Ah, damn. Well, OBS is still streaming. I can't tell if it's all okay? Yeah? Okay. All right. On my watch page, it says it's offline. So let me just very briefly, just a second. I will just check. Sorry, I'll just make, if I can. Okay, I'm being told I'm live, but I'm... Okay, so I'm getting a message saying your sound is good, but screen frozen. Okay, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm on the watch page. I'm just getting the okay, great. Looks like I'm back. Yeah, okay. Thanks for hanging in there, man. Yeah, all good now? Lovely. Yes. Okay. Super. Okie dokie. All right then. Let's just carry on with this because I lost my train of thought there. So the conclusions that these guys, Dunning and Kruger, had were that incompetent people are poor performers and unable to accurately assess and recognize the quality of their own work. And overestimate their own knowledge and ability and are incapable of seeing the poorness of their performance. So again, yeah, of course, we can see how this, the flat earther is accused of having Dunning-Kruger because it is assumed that they are ignorant of science, when in fact it's the opposite. We've looked into used discernment to determine the difference between science and the mathematical explanations that are used to tell the facts or the stories. So I'll just carry on. I'll go down here. Low performers are unable to recognize the skill and competence levels of other people. Again, we get these attacks and they say you're stupid, you're dumb, you don't understand physics, etc. So when it talks about low performers here, then this would be, perhaps this is again not someone who might be very smart and in their specialized field, but they are a low performer in terms of having that ability to see how other people can be good at other things, or maybe can be good at a multitude of things. So being a jack of all trades, there's nothing wrong with that at all. I think often if we are a specialist in one particular subject, then for sure we are going to leave behind or ignore or not know about many other things on a social level or a political level or a whatever it might be. If we are to not be a low performer, and again here we've got this trait that we see in the Globe Defender. They constantly view themselves as better, more capable, and more knowledgeable than others. And yeah, I noticed this early on. Is you'll have someone, for example, saying, well, if you're in a lift and the lift falls, I can calculate how long you'll be weightless for, or if you go off in an aircraft, I can calculate how much heavier you will be for how many seconds until. And well, yeah, that's physics, and you can do that, but it doesn't mean that we're on a globe. But there is this assumption that someone who can do the mathematical gymnastics for physics has the whole world in their hand, as it were. When of course we know that that's not true. Tyler says, are we really going to just sit here on these chats and argue with the same baller agents for another 4 years? What's the threshold? 20 years of debates? No, this is this is what I'm trying to get away from. I don't want. No, I think debates, perpetuating the issue with debates, is ridiculous. And I think, to be honest, if people aim to do that, then what is their aim? If they are going to perpetuate debates, now debates to some extent are healthy to help people who who are new to it and listen to both sides of the stories, and then again they can use their own discernment to see whether the bald earth defender is just being an arrogant dick, and whether the flat earther is trying to be some kind of reach some kind of compromise. So hopefully if there are debates, then at least people will see for themselves the difference between the hardcore defender of a belief and someone who is open to examining how we have formulated these beliefs. However, no, this is a twofold thing, isn't it? This whole flat Earth is a twofold thing, I think, because as we mentioned earlier, it's self-exploration. It's exploration of our own behaviors, our own cognition, our own mind. So that is an essential element of our own personal evolution, and evolution as a society, for sure, is to understand the mind. I'd say if people are going to study psychology, rather than learning books full of labels that you could actually apply to anyone, you should hang on a second. So for psychology, if people are going to study psychology, I think the first thing that should be taught in psychology is meditation, because meditation is an excellent way of understanding how your own mind works. Just contemplating and being the observer. When we meditate, we observe our emotions. We have to face, we have to be alone with our own thoughts, with our own emotions, and then we have to recognize or observe what happens when we think of something. So something comes to mind. It might be an ex-lover, or it might be a desire, or some jealousy or something. So this image, you're sitting there quietly and an image comes up. And that's the thing. The whole idea of meditation isn't to blank out your mind. It is to allow the thoughts to flow through you and observe the thoughts, like boats going past on water. You just watch them go by. And is that water turbulent, or is it calm? So when the thoughts come in, we look at them, we study them, and then we observe the physical manifestation of a thought. So the thought comes in, or the memory, an image comes in, and how does it make us feel? Does our heart rate increase? Does our blood pressure rise? Do we get do we get tension? Do we feel happy? Do we feel love? Do we feel hate? Do we feel jealousy? These things all can be observed. And again, you don't necessarily have to attach a label to it. So you have these people learning psychology, and what they learn is a whole bunch of labels, such as Dunning-Kruger, and then they start banding it about and applying it to every Tom, Dick, and Harry that they meet, thinking that they've got some kind. Psychologists are massive Dunning-Krugers because they believe they've got this extra special knowledge about how the mind works. And so they start accusing everyone of being this or that, and you're this and that and everything. So I say to anyone who's studied psychology and has all these labels they want to apply to people, well, you just go ahead and take a corporation or a CEO working in a corporation, and you apply your labels to the corporation as a person and see what labels you can apply, and you'll end up having, the corporation ends up being a psychopath. Yeah. My point was that psychology, one of the fundamental teachings of psychology should be the Buddhist teachings. Now, that's not to say that Buddhism is a religion, because Buddhism is a mind science. It's the science of the mind. And it's just observing how the mind works. And nobody has to tell you this. The answers are not in books, and the answers are not in labels. Eric's saying, I do have a degree in psychology and a lot of it's hogwash, especially Freudian crap. Oh, nice. Good to hear that. Thank you. I remember, I think it's when people do their A levels and they first start learning. Yeah, again, why? It's just like science, isn't it? It's just like the physics of the globe. When someone goes to learn psychology, they're given, okay, you have to have this book, this book, this book. And of course, Freud is at the top of the list. And they're talking about Freud's obsession with sexual relations and the daughter somehow having this sexual connection to the father and all that stuff. And I find that a lot of people who study psychology, they can go pretty nutty themselves because they're constantly worried about their own state of mind, and they're constantly applying these labels to their own state of mind and seeing themselves just as a human being who has emotions and has thoughts in this crazy society. All of a sudden they see the craziness in themselves. But they're not being taught to observe themselves properly. So yeah, that's why I like to promote Buddhism, not as a religion. Yes, you have the religious side of it, the robes, etc. But really it's a mind science. Because, and again, you don't have to have anyone teaching you that. You just, the act of observing brings about knowledge of all these different emotions, and what thoughts can do to us, what beliefs can do to us, and reflection and all that. Yeah. So sorry for ranting. It's great to see all the stuff going on in chat, and that's healthy as well. But I would ask or request that people try not to get nasty. It's easily done, but if someone is being nasty and accusing, then that's up to them. If we become offended, then we have fallen into the same trap. So thanks, Amy Kinsey. So of course people are mirrors for sure. So it's really easy to fall into that trap. But I think someone asked earlier on if is this debating going to go on for 20 years? Well, no, that's not the goal. The goal is to wake people up to this whole dichotomy that we are given, that's passed off on us, that keeps us debating, that keeps us at each other's throat, that keeps us arguing, that keeps us emotionally involved and attached. That's the problem. And of course, this is what we see with the Globe Earth Defender, or any defender, any religious zealot. They have that emotional attachment. So of course, if we can teach ourselves to recognize our own attachment to the emotions, then the simple act of observing and recognizing allows us to detach slowly. And it is a slow process. The anger might rise, the jealousy might rise, and it might take a while to recognize that. I'm sure we've all done it. We've all had arguments with our spouses or partners, and all hell breaks loose. Things end up getting thrown. Someone storms out the house. Someone drives off in a temper tantrum, and then you spend the rest of the day and the next day blaming that person. But then of course, when we reflect, we can maybe think that, well, this whole thing just spiraled out of control because he or she said something, and then the other person said something back, and boom, 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 off it went. If that one of those people had just zipped it and shut up and walked away, the whole thing would have dissipated and things would have resumed. And this is something I've learned also. My wife taught me this. She and I see it in the Thais, is that again, they're very patient people. They you see, in the Thai culture, to get angry is to lose face. So, but of course, that is completely opposite to the Western way we were brought up. To impose your will, to force your opinion on something, and to appear to be the winner of an argument is how we are taught, or how we are conditioned, or how we see society behaving. Whereas in this society, to be that person who's trying to beat someone down with their preferred logic is the aggressor, is loses face. So the whole thing here is to if you're the quiet one and the other guys go "Wah!" and you're just allowing them to have their rage, then you're the one in control. You're the one who has superiority, rather than the person, being verbally or physically violent. So yeah, just back to, and then my wife once told me that, well, if she says something that I take offense to or whatever, you just gotta. She said a real man will be quiet. In their culture, a real man will just, he won't, he'll let the woman have her rage, because if a really good book, is it Men Are from Mars, Women Are from Venus? A lot of truisms there, because of course the woman will say something from an emotional point of view, like, you're always doing this, you're always like that. And the man will say, well, no, hang on a minute, last Tuesday I took you out. And of course this is a complete, what the woman has said something in the heat of the moment, that, and of course to her it feels that things are always this way, and the man takes it literally, saying, well, no, actually, it kind of tries to break it down into these compartmentalized things. So you get this completely different mindset arguing with each other. This is the again. So this is the dialogue I would like to. And again, I'm not talking about organized debate, because it's still, in my mind, there is no debate. It's obvious that we're not on a spinning ball. It's obvious that we've been deceived into believing that we are. But we also accept that there is a limit to what we know, and that is still open to exploration and interpretation. I think a long while back in this chat, I started saying it was a twofold thing. So this is a twofold exploration of the mind and the heart and the body and belief systems, as well as the physical exploration of the place that we live on. So there's two types of exploration going on here. So no, this is not aimed to be a perpetual debate of minds and beliefs. Certainly not. But we are still in that stage of getting people to at least think about it and open up to it. And to just get people to those first steps. But ultimately, it's twofold. We explore ourselves inwardly and our place in society, and society as a rule in general, regardless of culture, religion, belief, nationality, gender, transgender, all that. It's all one big melting pot. But also the physical exploration of where this is. And that doesn't mean just going down to Antarctica. It means going everywhere, because sorry, I saw a chat directed at me. Robert Billings said, that is the key, is that no one who truly looks into this topic could possibly not see the obvious problem that we have been deceived on purpose, and yet somehow people miss that. Yeah. Yeah. And again, to try to determine or ascertain why would they lie is also secondary. And again, it might not necessarily be any one person or any one entity's agenda. It's just the way we are as human beings, how we will fall into a belief system very easily, and if we don't catch ourselves, then off we go. So of course, people in positions of influence and power will perpetuate something that suits them. But yeah, again, I really wouldn't know who to blame, and I wouldn't like to tar certain people with the same brush, because we're all just people, and it doesn't matter of our status, we can all be victims of Dunning-Kruger, we can all be victims of suffering, we can all be victims of all these things, jealousy, superiority complexes and all that. Yeah, so it applies to everyone. We're all just human. So what have I got here? This is just a quote from David Dunning. In many cases, incompetence does not leave people disoriented, perplexed, or cautious. Instead, the incompetent are often blessed with an inappropriate confidence, buoyed by something that feels to them like knowledge. So I'm sure we can definitely apply this to those people who ignore all the evidence that's presented to them about the deception, or the lack of evidence there is for the idea that we live on a globe. Yeah. So they feel they ignore, and they are incompetent at examining, at studying these things, but this gives them the confidence to feel that I know we're on a ball, I know we're on a globe. And as I was pointing out the other day, anyone who says they know we're on a globe, and the same applies to anyone who says I know we're on a flat earth with an ice wall, is lying, because no one has ever traveled or explored to the full extent. No one's ever been to the North Pole. No one's ever really been beyond the South Pole. No one's ever been to that place in the ocean that they call a spaceship graveyard. People don't go there. Pilots don't fly there. Ships don't go there. It's and all these poles of inaccessibility are not necessarily a point on the map, but they are a place beyond which people have not been. So whatever is beyond those poles of inaccessibility, north, south, wherever they may be, it remains a mystery, remains unknown. And no one has ever gone north to south and back up again. This is obviously something that we find out very early on in our exploration of the facts. What are the facts that go with the globe Earth belief? Has anyone ever actually circumnavigated the globe, all directions? No, they haven't. So anyone who says, I know we're on a globe, or I know we're on a flat Earth with an ice wall, is lying, because these are just ideas. Yeah. So, or anyone who claims to know the distance to the sun, whether it's 3,000 kilometers or miles or 93 million miles, that's a lie as well. The whole dome thing, or the firmament thing, to say that you know is a lie, I'm afraid. Yes, it's something that we can contemplate. It seems obvious that the stars are in some kind of layer. What that is, there's a limit to how high we can go, but that doesn't mean we necessarily hit a barrier. We simply do not know. I think that's the thing. So we do on all sides of these arguments, we do have, and this is the problem. This is, frankly, the problem that we faced with, the mockumentary that was done on the flat Earth conferences and this pushing of an alternative model. Of course, you have Globers demanding an alternative model because they feel that they have a model and they have all the distances, when it's a model that might work on paper but doesn't work in our physical reality yet. So there is this desire for a replacement. And so to replace it, but that's wrong. It's replaced it. The whole thing here is to be free of the beliefs. Someone directed a comment at me. Just a second. Chris Hayes says, I got to go. Oh, okay. Thanks, Chris. Catch up with you later, my man. Thank you for coming along. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So again, yeah. To claim that it's this way or that way is frankly wrong. The truth of the matter is, which is actually obviously the most difficult thing to handle, is us not knowing. And that is very frightening. It's very frightening to have that crutch removed. Of course, it feels very empowering to be able to. And I was the same. I had the books on space. I knew how big Jupiter was, and I knew how far away it was, and I watched it through a telescope myself, and seen the Jupiter's moons. Yeah. And had the dreams about aliens, and of course that's perpetuated in the media, and it's all there. So you really do become. It feels like you have that knowledge, and it feels that, yeah. But after a while we realise that it's not knowledge. So interesting though, in this one of the science quizzes that the Dunning-Kruger did, they found that women performed equally well to men. However, women underestimated their performance because they believed they had less scientific reasoning ability than men. And so these women were more likely to refuse to enter a science competition. So it is funny how we have, we can see in these debates that predominantly it's men who are arguing. And that goes for the flat earthers and the globe earthers. It's mostly men. Why is that? It's just one of those traits. In fact, someone I know who's not a flat earther but understands that space exploration has its limitations, isn't being done. Sees the whole thing as this. It's a very male thing, the whole phallic thing, the rockets going up, but the whole idea of spreading our seed across the universe, impregnating aliens, and kind of off to other planets to populate them. It's a very male thing, penetrating space. And all that stuff. So it is a very even though he's an awake person, this guy that kind of gave this analogy to me, but he's a long way from flat Earth, because it's just he's making those steps, he's taking those steps through it, but it's the awareness that he has. But he does realize that the attachment that space buffs have with this whole thing is a very male-driven thing. Just splurging our seed across the universe is something that drives the desire to get off this rock and go and populate other planets with these phallic rockets. Interesting that the women, of course, have just as much ability as men, yet they will be a little bit more humble about their own perceived ability to perform in that area. And here it says, ask respondents if they are familiar with a variety of terms related to subjects including politics, biology, physics, and geography. Along with genuine subject-relevant concepts, they interjected completely made-up terms. So basically, get these respondents in the Dunning-Kruger studies. They might be very politically aware, or they might be in the sciences, biology or physics, and so they would have good knowledge of the different terminology in those different skills or elements of education. But then Dunning and Kruger put in these kind of made-up terms, and they found that an amazing 90% of the respondents claimed that they had at least some knowledge of the made-up terms. Yeah, the more familiar participants claimed that they were with a topic, the more likely they were to also claim that they were familiar with the meaningless terms. And one thing that pops to mind there is this whole idea of the bending of space-time, which is considered to be the way gravity works. But if you really think about what that means, it is totally ridiculous. Time is an abstract concept. You cannot bend time. In fact, time is something that passes slowly or quickly in our own minds. It's a subjective experience, the passage of time. But of course, in science and maths, it's measured by minutes. And we can see, as I mentioned the other day, it is simply the interpretation of time, looking at the luminaries and measuring the passage of time with the cosmic clock in the sky there, sun, moon, stars, that is translated into a heliocentric model. The heliocentric model is nothing more than telling the time. And again, it works as far as communication and trade across the earth, across many countries. But timelines, datelines, time zones, and all that, years, the solar calendar, the Gregorian calendar, which is a solar calendar, as opposed to the lunar calendar. These are all just ways of measuring time. But you do not have to say that we're going around the moon in order to follow the lunar calendar. But we've been told by following the Gregorian calendar that we're going around the sun in a heliocentric system. It was just a decision to put the sun at the center, or have the sun as the focal point of the timekeeping mechanism. And that, again, it's fine to have that. But to tell us that it is our physical reality is, again, wrong, because it is a bias interpretation of what can be many possible interpretations. So again, just to be clear, for those who might think flat Earth is crazy, or is a frisbee floating in space, no, the whole idea of flat Earth is to realize that we're not on a spinning ball, and as far as we can tell, the Earth is stationary, and obviously it is level with mountains and what have you, high places, low places, but of course for water those places are level. And what's just popped into my mind here is the whole tide argument, when of course that becomes ridiculous when only sea appears to be affected by the tide, but lakes are not. So there's obviously something else going on there when it comes to tides. Dunning suggested that ignorance can feel just like expertise. Now again, we can see that for the globe earth defender accusing the flat earther of ignorance of science, that they will feel that you're exhibiting Dunning-Kruger because they believe that we have ignored science. Again, it's discernment of the difference between science and the way science is described, and mathematical models created and assumed to be science or physics. Yeah, so it's not ignorance, but that's the thing. That's why Dunning-Kruger is bandied about by people on all aspects of the argument, because they believe the other person is ignorant and feels like an expert. But of course, we can feel like an expert if we can repeat, oh, the sun's 93 million miles away, or it's the terminology that's used to describe or explain the heliocentric model. Or we can say, well, the Eratosthenes experiment with the parallel lines of light, that's just an explanation that doesn't fit with reality. It just goes on. So again, the truth seeker does not ignore, and the flat earther per se is not just swapping one model for another. They're just saying it's not a spinning globe, the rest is open to exploration. Yeah. So the causes of Dunning-Kruger effect: dual burden. People are not only incompetent, but their incompetence robs them of the mental ability to realize just how inept they are. So, for example, incompetent people overestimate their own skill levels. Again, let's take the analogy of a driver, a racing car driver. Someone's driving really fast and who may be a very good driver. But the thing is, what you have to do when you're driving is take into consideration the potential behavior of every other driver on the road. So even if you have the skills and ability to drive fast and you know how to handle your vehicle, it doesn't mean that you can necessarily predict or anticipate what the bloke in front of you or behind you or beside you is going to do. That takes a different level of expertise or a different, so again, it goes back to that idea of believing that if we are competent in one particular skill set, that it makes us an expert in everything, which is obviously not the case. And for whatever thing needs to be done, it takes a huge amount of varied expertise. So to build a car, for example, takes all kinds of different expertise. The mechanic isn't a designer. And the person who designs the fabric or the electronics is someone different to the guy who does the test driving or makes the windshield or the computer. This is a whole variety of expertise that's brought together to create a car. Yeah. Now, of course, someone will say, well, all these different experts have been brought together to create rockets. Great, fine. Rockets get off the ground. They work. They do their job. They've done amazing things with their knowledge. But that's the thing, isn't it? What happens after the rocket has gone out of sight? If this pole of inaccessibility in the ocean is where they dump all the rockets. I mean, if you think about what's sent up, the satellites that are sent up on a rocket, then, well, what's left of the rocket? Nothing. It all has to come back down again. But what's actually gone up there? We don't see the payload. So, is the satellite just a balloon, or is it physically possible that because they're not going into a vacuum, that they're actually, as long as something is light enough, it will get carried around in the jet streams, that it can do that in perpetually. Yeah. And anyone can go and look up geocentric balloons. Again, this is technology that they use. NASA's Echo 1 satellite. NASA's first satellite, so they say, was a massive balloon, Echo 1. So why? And that worked. they were able to send it up. It went around the world, and they were able to transmit and receive TV and radio signals from it, they say. So why would you need to adapt the technology if a balloon works? And it was a big reflective balloon. They sent it up, and it stayed up for like months and months at a time. So this is the thing. The rockets will go up. They'll work, but what's their payload? What are they actually delivering? And are they really going into a vacuum? It would appear that they're not. And a very important one here in the causes of the Dunning-Kruger effect is that people fail to recognize the genuine skill and expertise of other people. So, of course, someone who has investigated the globe lie, and of course, a lot of it is down to other people pointing out these things that they've noticed in, for example, footage of satellites or ISS or whatever. They might have a skill in TV production, and they've pointed out, well, this is so then that knowledge is passed on to the person who wishes to investigate, or someone spotted bubbles in space, or someone's gone and tried to create thrust thrust in a vacuum, and then they pass on that knowledge that it can't be done. So that's the thing, isn't it? This is very important when it comes to Dunning-Kruger. If you fail to recognize the genuine skill and expertise of other people, so people who have discernment to understand language and see how language is misused and abused to describe or explain how the globe works, level and all that, gravity, and see that it's just an explanation, a twisting of the language. If people refuse to see how language has been used to perpetuate the belief in the model, then they will continue to remain ignorant, but they will feel they have the knowledge that makes them superior, and the flat earther ignorant and stupid. So it is them that is displaying the Dunning-Kruger. And they fail to recognize their own mistakes and lack of skill. Now, I'm sure for all of us that have been on this path to the eventual realization that we're not on a spinning ball, is that we have taken it upon ourselves to study ourselves and realize our failures. It's all part of that personal development, right? We realize we might have become angry or got out of control, or we've admitted our mistakes. We have the ability to say sorry and realize when we've done something wrong. But do we see this trait in the people doing hit pieces and defending the globe and trying their best to trash very smart, genuine, intelligent, truth-seeking people who are simply doing that? They're asking questions. Dunning pointed out that the very knowledge and skills necessary to be good at a task are the exact same qualities that a person needs to recognize that they are not good at a task. We see it with a lot of the time people doing measurements. I think someone mentioned, I'm not sure, but just this prompted me something someone said in the chat. These water level experiments. The irony is that they use water level to check level, but you'll see that they always do it skew whiff. They never line up the thing with eye level, or and they intentionally or mistakenly get it out of whack. And of course, another thing you have with someone who realizes that horizons are not curvature, just in the same way that a horizon isn't an edge, is because they have the ability to consider all the other factors, the way the eye works, the way weather is, all the other elements, diffraction, refraction, what have you, and then we can see that the sun disappears in the distance because it just gets too far away to see anymore. It just vanishes on or above the horizon. It goes beyond where we can see it. But of course, the glober wants to tell you that there is no other way. For example, ships disappearing from the bottom up, which they don't always do. But for the Globe Earth Defender, that is their solid proof. They will not consider any other factors. But of course, the only way they are looking at it is from a geometric model perspective that does not include other elements. And I'm sure for all you guys in chat there, or listening who have gone through this process, you've taken all these explanations for the globe and tried to compare them with reality and with each other, and you suddenly realize that there is this disjointed jigsaw puzzle that just doesn't go together. It doesn't fit. The pieces, the compartmentalized proofs, don't fit together as a coherent, cohesive model. It just doesn't work. And then you come to the realization that is on its own out there, and reality is something else entirely. Yeah. So just being able to repeat the explanations, or just being able to do the equations related to physics, isn't enough, because you have to understand that, again, the connection between earthbound physics and whatever's happening in the heavens, as it were, has been made or assumed. And the reality is that all we've ever done is tell the time. So if a person lacks those abilities, they remain not only bad at that task, but ignorant of their own ability. So again, it comes back to that social interactions. If someone's calling you, if for example you've got these people doing hit pieces and repeating the same trashy name calling without doing any experiments, without going out and anyone who looks for themselves and realizes that we can see further than we're supposed to should start asking questions. Anyone who sees that the fakery, or the fakery is pointed out to them but refuses to see it, is someone who they lack that ability to take that into consideration. So again, this is all we desire, isn't it? This is all we want people to do, is to look at the evidence or lack thereof and process that internally, be honest with one's self as to what that means. But this is the problem we face. We face this lack of compromise, disability to take on new information. As they say, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, actually you can. And a lot of us are old dogs. I'm an old dog. I'm approaching 50. And for many, many years, went along with the belief that we're on a globe, until I looked into it. And I'm sure I'm just saying exactly what a lot of you all feel and know that you did yourself. It's not until you take the time to look into it with an open mind and do the research in all areas of physics and mathematics. Again, the simple understanding that geometry there are many forms of geometry, and you can project a flat surface to a globe, or vice versa. But of course, if you raise this point with a globe defender, they will say all maps are based on the globe and flat maps are projections of the globe. And so they have this cognitive dissonance where they refuse to see that it can go either way. Yeah? And this goes, the mathematics again, triangles and geometry all use ratios and degrees. So triangles have 180 degrees. Put two triangles together, you've got 360 degrees. And so does a circle have 360 degrees. And horizon to horizon is 180 degrees. So these are all interchangeable. So it doesn't mean, and that this is why they use longitude and latitude lines, and everything's divided up into hemispheres and equators, because you have to divide it up into what we subjectively see. So if we're in a particular location, that place on the map is going to be in a particular hemisphere on one or the other side of the equator. So all the globe is this patching together of these maps using geometry and trigonometry that is interchangeable. Yeah, trigonometry, geometry can, because they use the same angles, 180 degrees in a triangle, 180 degrees in a semicircle, two triangles, 360 degrees, the whole lot is interchangeable, especially when you start putting it on paper in 2D, ignoring the multi-dimensional experience and of perspective, our subjective perspective. And this is what the Globe Earth Defender doesn't see. They are seeing something in 2D, believing that they are seeing a representation of 3D. When no, perspective, the three-dimensional perspective, depth of field, has been taken out, been chopped away, or translated into an imaginary curve instead. And of course, you don't have to consider the whole sphere. You just consider that hemisphere for each person's subjective experience, and then patch them all together as a globe. So we have this inability to recognize lack of skill and mistakes. Just focus on that one. Yeah, the inability to recognize lack of skill and mistakes. So again, you might be skilled at mathematics, you might be skilled at this or that, but you do not recognize your lack of skill in social interaction or the nuances of language, other languages other than mathematics. Or you do not recognize that there are psychopaths. A lot of these globe defenders might be nice people. Even atheists are nice people. They have good intention. They are trying to be detached. They are trying to say, I'm nothing, I'm just a little speck, and I'm not special. That's their belief, and that's what they're trying to achieve in their own mind. But at the same time, they lack the ability to take into consideration those esoteric things. See you, Dave. That we know exist in our reality. The sixth sense, the way we can communicate, the way we can, these things that happen to us, the frequencies, the way music affects us, the way all these interactions happen that we cannot necessarily measure with scientific instruments, but we know are part of our existence. Cause people to perform poorly in a domain in which they are incompetent. Okay, but kind of self-explanatory really. And their erroneous and deficient knowledge makes them unable to recognize their mistakes. Pretty much saying the same thing there. Okay, so we have this lack of metacognition. Metacognition means the ability to step back and look at one's own behavior and abilities from outside oneself. And again, this is something that the truth seeker or someone who is trying to develop will do. It will take a step back and try to observe oneself in a situation. Why did I get angry? Why did I react in that way? Was it a reaction that was programmed into me? Was it a belief that was programmed into me? Or was it of one's true self? Yeah? So again, if you have someone making these blind accusations, name calling, all that stuff, they do not have the ability to perceive what the name calling means to others. If oh, you're a dick, you're an idiot. What does that mean if you're going to call people that? What does that say about yourself? Do you have the ability to step back and observe yourself saying that to someone else? Yeah? So again, this is why I would like to avoid the hate speech on either side, because it just perpetuates the dichotomy. And so we often evaluate ourselves from our own limited, highly subjective point of view. Again, this just comes down to what we've already discussed. Someone thinking they are right because they have certain knowledge that they've acquired, and this belief that other people are ignorant. When, of course, if we're saying that we are, if we admit that there is a limit to our knowledge, then we're in a better position to look at it pragmatically, rather than saying, I know I'm on a globe, or I know I'm on a flat earth with an ice wall. Yeah? So again, these people feel highly skilled, knowledgeable, and superior to others, struggle to have a realistic view of their own abilities. Flat Earth Bear, hang on. Flat Earth Bear says, I agree with you entirely, but sometimes calling someone a dick just gets right to the point. True, yeah, I mean, yeah, you know. And again, you know, for example, a monk or a guru might be expected to be just but no, they are also allowed to get angry at this, you know, stupidity and arrogance. Yeah, there's a monk here in Thailand that's well known. In fact, he died recently, but he was well known for getting his walking stick and knocking people on the head who were just being stubborn and arrogant. Yeah? It didn't make him less of a Buddhist. It's just that he was acting from the you know, it's just the knowledge that you're being a dick. Yeah, so you're right, man. You are right. It's still okay to call someone a dick if they're being a dick. But obviously, everything in moderation, right? Yeah, a little knowledge can lead to overconfidence, and of course, this is why a lot of the Globe Earth defenders they'll pick on this particular aspect of Dunning-Kruger, and they say, "Oh, you only know a little bit of science, but you think you know everything." When, of course, a lot of the time, the science that we're repeating, the Globe Earth defender is repeating, is the Newtonian science. But if you look at the scientific community, there are millions of people making all kinds of crazy esoteric contributions to the field of science in many more ways than any one of us can ever really brush up on or know about. Science is a massive field of exploration of everything about life, everything about our physical reality. So again, there is no one who can be have specialized knowledge in what this physical reality is. Emerald Rider, the monk was just knocking some calcium from the penis. Ah, nice one, yeah. Get it out, yeah. Oh, yeah, funny. So, yeah, a tiny bit of knowledge on the subject can lead people to mistakenly believe that they know all there is to know about it. Yeah. So other factors, our use of heuristic or mental shortcuts to make decisions quickly, or our tendency to seek out patterns even where none exist. That is definitely obviously something that we do. This is a science of the mind. We do it. We all do it. We see these patterns, and on a very basic level, again, it becomes that connection between objects falling through the air and whatever's going up on in space. So they see these people saw a pattern. Basically, again, the measurement of time. We see the stars and the sun rise and set at certain times or over the year. It's a pattern for sure. And then, of course, they think, oh, well, I know the pattern. I know astronomy. I know I know where this is. I know the names, and I know when you can see this and when you can't see that. And so they make the connections. And of course, again, in their mind, it's a very solid, infallible, irrefutable model. Understandably so. It is understandable that this becomes so locked in because they see the patterns. And this is why you see people say a working model. But you ask them to explain what they mean by a working model. When it comes down to it, all it means is that they have explanations. There's an explanation for every element of the globe Earth heliocentric model. It doesn't mean that there is physical proof. It doesn't mean there is scientific measurable proof. Again, there is measurable proof only in as such that we can predict when and where we will see an eclipse, for example. But that doesn't dictate the shape of the Earth, does it? It doesn't dictate that the Earth is moving or the Earth is a globe. Yeah? So yes, we try to make sense of a disparate array of information. And again, this is why we cling to the belief. This is why if a lot of people say, oh, well, it all makes sense to me. And again, it's understandable to cling to that, because the moment you let go of that, suddenly we find ourselves in a position, oh my God, it's not how I thought it was. And now what? Well, I need something else. I need another model. Give me something else. Give me the answer. Give me an explanation. Give me an alternative. And so, yes, there's that. Again, we just have to allow ourselves to be lost at sea and allow the current to take us wherever it will take us. But for a lot of people, that is a very difficult thing to do. A lot of people fight the current. It just made me think of rip currents. This is a problem here. And people come to Phuket and they die they drowning by numbers, as it were. Especially when I was working at the newspaper, every year we'd put out the warnings as much as we could. Don't go swimming at certain times of year, but people would still do it. The tourists will come and of course they want to go out into the sea. It looks very inviting, and they don't know that there are rip currents, and they get carried out by the rip current. But even if you get carried out by a rip current, all you have to do is just let it carry you out and then gradually swim off to the side, and then hopefully you'll be all right. But of course, what people do is they fight it. They fight, and they try to swim ashore, and they're fighting a losing battle. And that's how people drown, is because they become exhausted trying to fight the rip current rather than letting it take them out, and then and just guiding them. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, and that's a brilliant analogy of people who, they might be very confident, strong swimmers, but they put themselves into a foreign environment and they think they can do it. I know what I'm doing, and they'll even lifeguards will say, don't go swimming, and they'll, oh God, leave me alone, and the people have died. It's funny, I know lifeguards. They'll tell those people, don't go in the water, or don't swim here, don't swim there. Oh, no. And then 10 minutes later, they're dragging the guy out of the water unconscious. Flat enough says, can't currents drag you down to the bottom? Well, yes, but often, again, it depends where the current is, I suppose, right? But what essentially happens here is we usually float, right? And that's the advice they give you, is to just allow yourself to be carried out by the current rather than fighting it, and you'll be all right. And you just veer off to the side. So yeah, right. So to kind of round this up, and this is really kind of, I suppose, these are good pointers for self-development of anyone, to how to overcome the Dunning-Kruger effect. Learn more about how the mind works and the mistakes we are all susceptible to, so we realistically assess ourselves. We keep on learning and practicing. We don't assume that we know all there is to know about the subject. Be self-critical, question what you know, and challenge beliefs. I think that's a really, really good way to conclude that. And that is what we're doing. We're challenging beliefs. We believe there's a curve at the horizon. We believe the sun is massive. We believe we're on a globe. We believe people are on Mars. They're sending spaceships to Mars. Yeah? We believe that people can't lie to this extent. We believe that they're doing it for the betterment, the good of humanity, space exploration, etc. Yeah? So, yeah. Again, a lot of globe defenders are nice people. Yeah. Something ironic says, we believe the Earth is flat. Well, no, there is again, as I've said, flat Earth is used as a term to say we realise we're not on a spinning globe. But personally, it could, the true dimensions and extent of this Earth are unknown, and whether we are on one of many, whatever, it just completely remains unknown. It's having that ability to detach from the belief that we're some body floating in space, or that we are another planet. So understand what you're saying when you might say that flat Earth is a belief. And yes, many people have adopted a belief that they've swapped one belief for another, that it's an ice wall and centered on the North Pole. I still question whether the North Pole is the center, or whether there are any poles and all that. I mean, it's still completely open. So again, flat Earth is just a term that is a realization that essentially we are stationary, and our vision. Oops, I got a moth on me. Excuse me. Off you go. Our vision tells us, and we can trust our senses, because our senses tell us. They tell us the right way up. It's essential. So, yeah, we know that to that extent. But beyond that, does remain open to exploration. So, yeah, that is definitely the key, discerning between knowledge and belief. Yeah. Oh, hang on, Eye Level Awakening, I've just got to show your chat there. And dates. All right. Okay. Basically, I'm done with that little presentation. Really appreciate being able to share that. If I've missed a lot of what's going on in the chat, apologies for that. Oh, Bangkok Dave, you didn't go to bed then? You're still here. Okay. Let me just... What I'll do is just quickly give a mention to the others that have come along, and say thank you. Richard Burke, Proficient Pilot, Steve Finneran, Steve HV, The Buzz Dev, Tom Budas, Tony Dixon, Zoo Scott, Multi Tom Tom, Mr. Effie, Lev Kung Fu, Lee Templar, LBB Store, Night of the Round Table, Kevin, Balfour, John Corey, Gideon, Sick, FPV Angel, Flat Earth Bear, Eric, Emerald Rider, Daz, Bangkok Dave, Bates, 60, Alexander A, McKinsey. Really appreciate you all coming along and sharing this. Oh, Stuart. Okay, so not everyone was mentioned in the little list I had there. So, yeah. Again, if you're doesn't matter what you believe. I hope we've been able to share something together and make some progress. So I shall bid you all good night and see you all again soon. Thanks very much indeed.